Thank you for turning to page 121. Today we're going to take a look at the last of the 7 Gord the Rogue novels. We're going to look at the last 2 together. The 6th is Come Endless Darkness, and the 7th is Dance of Demons. I'm doing these together because honestly, Dance of Demons was not very well loved, and I was afraid if I did this as a standalone, it might not get a lot of clicks. I'm going to warn you, there are spoilers in this, so if you haven't had the opportunity to read these novels or read about them on the internet in the last 35 years, tune out. I'm going to give up a lot of spoilers in both these novels, and I'm going to say what I really liked and didn't care much for in each of the novels. Also, I just want to take a moment to say I'm still looking for subscribers. The channel is growing very well. I want to keep it growing. Let's keep it so I can keep presenting these videos. I really enjoy doing them. And from the feedback I'm getting, a lot of folks like seeing them. So help me grow the channel. I also have a Patreon going right now. I'm going to be putting up a free poll on the Patreon. I haven't decided the topic yet, so you can go over there and take a look at that. It won't cost you anything. I'm also going to be looking at a tier reward for Patreon, and I haven't finalized that yet either. End of the commercial. Back to the important stuff. Gygax's last definitive word on Greyhawk. Come Endless Darkness and Dance of Demons, today on page 121. Come Endless Darkness and Dance of Demons. This is your final warning. There will be spoilers, including who lives and dies in my review of these two. So if you don't know or haven't had a chance to read it in the last 35 years, I'm letting you know now. I am going to give up a lot of info on these books. First, we're going to start with Come Endless Darkness. This is the 6th book in the series. It followed up Sea of Death, which I think is one of Gygax's best books. And Come Endless Darkness I thought was a really good book. In this book, for the most part, Gord, Chert, Curly, Greenleaf, and Gellor, along with Timon and Alton, a cleric and a magic user, respectively, who are introduced only in this book, are going against the forces of Gravestone. And Gravestone, as we've come to find out, is the one who orchestrated the deaths of Gord's parents. Now, this well predates Voldemort and all his stuff, so I realized that the ideas behind this, with the baby being abandoned, the parents being killed by an old evil, etc., are not new. I always kind of scratched my head when I heard about Harry Potter and company. But back to the topic at hand. Gravestone is this great evil cleric mage living in Greyhawk who has some divine capabilities and is really just about quasi-deity in this book. I don't want to call him a demigod because he's not quite there, but he's definitely a quasi-deity. And most of the book takes place within the city of Greyhawk, which is pretty cool. But because we're in Gravestone's tower, there's a lot of different dimension hopping and things involved. So we really don't get much of a flavor for Greyhawk other than at the beginning. We get a little flavor of Greyhawk. As we go through the story, Alton and Timmel teleport their way up to fight the evil guy right away, and they split from the party. Strange tactic, especially because we're given to believe both are lawful good. Strange tactic for them to take. Gygax's interpretation of lawful good and mine are very different. His belief was lawful good, you went forward no matter what. My belief was you didn't abandon your buddies just because you thought you could achieve the objective by yourself. But there's another issue with lawful good that I'll come into in a little bit in the telling about this book. So we get to Gravestone's tower, and our heroes start climbing the stairs, and we come to find out these stairs are enchanted. Each stair takes our heroes to another layer of existence, another dimension. And in one of the dimensions, it's all these huge rusted bells that just start ringing. And at each dimension, they have to find the next stair to exit. And it's pretty good party play because the 4 characters together, which are Gord, Gellor, Chert, and Curly Greenleaf, they each come up with different solutions of how to get out of this trap or that trap, and it makes some pretty good dungeon crawl. And I have adapted the actual stairs and a lot of the dungeon crawl stuff out of this novel into my game. My players aren't aware of it because I'm the only one that's read all of these, but they've been through several of Gravestone's traps over the years. So this is all good, and the players are doing well, and Gord is just starting to realize that he's really just not a thief anymore. He's become this rather superior swordsman and starting to gain other various and sundry powers. But apparently none of those powers really include a lot of healing, at least not at this point. Because at one point in the course of the story, Gelor, Curly Greenleaf, and Chert are all laid out. They're all 0 hit points or below. We're not sure if they're dead or not, but they're definitely in desperate straits. They're breathing their last. And Gord, out of nowhere, and a little bit of a Deus Ex Machina, pulls out this talisman that lets him summon a Solar. Solars are lawful good, direct servants of deities. And it's not really named which deity the Solar serves, but the Solar appears and says, yes, what can I do? And Gord says, help my 3 friends. We're fighting a great evil. And the Solar says, well, yeah, I sense there's a great evil here, and it could be really bad. And wow, this guy's really bad enough to like mess up your planet. But I'm not going to get involved in it. Okay, I can accept that. That's part of the Solar shtick. But then he says, you know what? You yourself have been tainted by neutrality mostly, and even a touch of evil here and there. So I'm not going to heal all 3 of your friends. Instead, I'm only going to let you pick 1. And the one you pick will live, and the other 2 shall die. And I read this back in 1988, I think this was published, and I'm scratching my head going, wait a minute, this guy's lawful good, and he's making him make a choice like that? Pick which 2 of your friends will die, and I shall save 1? I did not think that was a lawful good behavior. I thought that Gygax kind of missed the point there, and I also thought he missed an opportunity for Gord to grow as a character a little bit, to argue with the Solar saying, hey, you're supposed to be good. Why are you making me make what is by definition, in my opinion, an evil choice? But it's glossed over. And Gord says, well, give me Gelor, because he's the strongest of the 3, and he gives me the best chance of completing the mission. That's it. Chert and Curly are gone. We don't really hear from them again. Gord doesn't really even mourn them. They're just out of the stories. And there's no reason to believe that they ever come back in any way, shape, manner, or form. So having stuck with Chert and Curly Greenleaf, I do that all the time, for so long, I was really kind of ticked. I thought it was a casual way to spend the lives of 2 characters that I'd actually grown fond of. But characterization was not one of Gygax's strengths. The dungeon and the setting were more his strength than characterization. So I'll let that go. So as the story progresses, they fight Gravestone, and through Gord's intervention and all kinds of different magics and things like that, they're able to actually beat him. And Gord defeats the guy who is the one who orchestrated the deaths of his parents. Yay, Gord, good job. Now, in my opinion, this should have been the last book of the series. We should have had Gravestone being in some way the keeper to Thurisdan's sleep, and it should have ended here in the 6th book. I would have liked this ending. It would have been a nice wrap-up. Gord gets revenge. He's still mortal. He loses a few friends, but he learns a lot, etc., etc. I thought it would have been a good ending. And then we got this one. Now, let me say first off, I don't hate this book. I, in fact, rather like this book, all but about the last 10 pages. I don't like that it doesn't feel like Gord anymore. Believe it or not, this is Gord on the cover, and this is him later. Doesn't look much like a thief anymore, does he? He's not. He is the champion of balance, and he is given all kinds of magical powers, and he's just powerful beyond belief, to the point of standing down demon lords and things like that. Now, granted, he's got parts of the Theor part by this point that he's been using, and the Theor part, I have to recap a little bit. Earlier in the novels, we find this ancient evil artifact that's been split into 3 parts. One for neutral evil, one for lawful evil, one for chaotic evil, and it's called the Theor part. And you put the 3 together, and it opens the key, and Thurisdan is loose, and he's going to conquer the world, or the universe, and make everybody serve his evil ways. Gord gains control, for reasons in the novels, he gains control of all 3 Theor parts, and he is able to assemble them, and he tries to use them against Thurisdan, and it's a pretty good fight, and would have been a good moment to end Thurisdan. But Lord Entropy, who's been a quiet player for the Lords of Balance through all this, Entropy being the force that makes all things wind down to nil, and eternal stillness is his goal, he interferes because he thinks Thurisdan will bring about entropy faster than would happen naturally. So he interferes, and he breaks part of Thurisdan's prison, and Thurisdan, on the verge of death, breaks out of this little hole that's been created and flees off into the cosmos to heal his wounds, leaving Gord and company in a really bad spot. I would have liked to pay off. I've read a lot of these. I'd read all of them to this point. I was excited about it. I would have liked to pay off at that point. But okay, we're going to delay the payoff a little bit. Well, no. Now the complexion of the novel changes entirely. And Gord, Galor, and Gord's ladylove, Leda, a drow clone of Eclavdra of House Isleserves, and see my previous videos for more on her, begin to flee around our universe from Thurisdan, because Thurisdan is gradually chasing them and he's harassing them, and he's using Ethhounds to surround them and bring them to bay. And as they each time Gord or company tries to flee our cosmos, he closes off a gateway, and he closes a gateway, and eventually they run around, and he's closed off all but one gateway. And that gateway lies beneath Castle Greyhawk. So Gord, Leda, and Galor all flee beneath Castle Greyhawk for the final payoff with Thurisdan. Thurisdan comes and tracks them down, and for reasons, they lose. They lose big time. Thurisdan wins, and the last portal is sealed, and Thurisdan is, ha ha ha, I have won, the universe is mine. Uni meaning one. The only creatures left by this point in the universe are Lord Entropy, who's always present, and Thurisdan. Thurisdan realizes he's trapped in our cosmos, and he goes on a rage and he destroys everything. He wipes out all of Greyhawk, all of our universe, everything. That's the part of this book I hated. And I'll go into the reasons why Greyhawk was wiped out in a minute. So he wipes out Greyhawk, and he and Lord Entropy begin fighting, and the Entropy knowing eventually, of course, he'll win. So that's the end of Thurisdan and Entropy. They win, but they lose. We find out through various neutral deities, and I'm not going to go into a ton of who exactly did what because that would make me make another video. But neutral deities, they have been quietly pulling out all the essences of everybody in our universe and plunking them down in other universe, in another pre-made universe, to continue living on. So Gord awakens to find himself as this prince of cats, and he's going to marry his ladylove on this beautiful spring day, having thought he was killed. And no, he's on the planet Yarth, and he is going to marry Leda. And Galor is this bumbling arch wizard kind of guy who comes up and discusses the situation with Gord. And we're come to believe that Gord's the only one that realizes any of the events of the previous life in Greyhawk. So that brings up a few problems for me. For one thing, everyone in Greyhawk suffered death of personality. If they don't remember their previous lives and they're simply alive in another body, in another universe, then they're not really the person that they were. So that always bothered me, because Gord's the only one that remembers what happened, so everybody else suffered at least the death of who they were. They're physically alive, but they're a different person than they had been. The other thing that always bothered me was that this just was kind of a down ending, in my opinion. Oh, it's a good day, Gord awakens and everything's fine, but that just seemed too miraculous for my taste. And it bothered me a lot. Well, what it was, and we all kind of knew this when this one was out, was that Gygax had parted with TSR 2 or 3 years before the publication of this novel. And in the parting, a very acrimonious parting, they were in court fighting over various things that Gygax owned and that TSR owned. And in fact, there's a lot of things in the Gord the Rogue books that need translation, because he couldn't use the actual name from D&D, so he had to come up with something else. So we have different names for different creatures. Zagig is like Gigantos, I think, and there's a couple others. So what it was is the fans, especially the fans of Greyhawk and especially the fans of these novels, got caught up in the infighting between Gary Gygax and his former company. And as almost always happens to the fanboys in that, the fanboys lost. I don't think Gygax gave much thought to the reader when he wrote the ending to this novel, because it's definitely kind of a middle finger to TSR, but unfortunately we're standing behind TSR and we caught the finger too. It's the only way I can describe this book. I'm sorry, I try to be positive, but I knew this one was going to be a tough one to stay positive about. So that's the end of that part of it. But what I liked about Dance of Demons was, if you want a good look at multiverse hopping and going from plane to plane and ridiculous quasi-level deity shenanigans, this is your book. Gord is no longer this thief acrobat who's rolling and tumbling his way through life. He's just standing there blasting stuff with rays of power. Galor has a harp that he can strum and wipes out demons literally by the hundreds. Lita gains powers, allows her to keep hordes of demons at bay with ease. So this is definitely a kind of a primer for if your game is getting to a point where your characters are getting too powerful for the prime material plane, this is a good way to take a look at another plane. I regularly run a group of our characters. We call them the mega levels. I've mentioned them before on the channel. These are characters that by all rights should have retired years and years ago. And some of these characters are over 40 years old. We didn't want to retire them because we loved them so. And for the most part, they're movers and shakers in my world of Greyhawk. So what I've done is we've called them mega levels, and I've just had to up the ante when we play the mega levels. Their challenges are much more difficult. I don't always make them world ending and things like that, but I make them much tougher for the mega levels than even a 15th level character would be able to handle. And I admit freely, the mega levels are by definition ridiculous, but mostly my creation, but it's my creation over 40 plus years of DMing. And they're also beloved characters of all my players. So if their power levels are ridiculous, oh well. It's just the byproduct of having played a great game for a very long time. So I used this when the mega levels were still more or less mortal. I used this as a nice primer to get us moving into the multiverse direction, things like that. I want to say one other thing too. On the cover here, Come Endless Darkness, that's Ayuz clenched in Thurisdan's hand. Ayuz gets killed in this, but it's a dream sequence, which I was a little upset about. In this one, he gets killed, and it's not a dream sequence. And since Ayuz was our main villain, along with Zugtmoy and Igwilv, for them to be killed in the space of about 4 pages was really disappointing. They did not get any real payoff. They did not end up being real movers at the end of the story. And again, I think this goes toward more if an author is a world builder instead of a character builder. And I think that's what we see. But that's it. I'm done. I did these two together because I wasn't certain that if I did Dance of Demons by itself, I wasn't certain, frankly, if anybody would watch. So I did these last two together. That completes my run of the Gord the Rogue novels. There is a little bit more Gord to look at from another source, and I will, but only if there's interest. So let me know if you want to see more about Gord, written by Gygax for the most part. If you want to see more of him on this channel, I have one more video I could do dealing with Gord. So that's it. That's all I've got today from page 121. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends, and I'll see you next time.